Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Leadership Alliance's Virtual Professional Development Series, Week 5, Applying to Graduate School. My name is Dr. Gina Astorini, and I'm the Associate Director for the Leadership Alliance, and I am joined today by a prestigious group of grad students who are diverse, have diverse backgrounds, stories to share, and they're at various levels of their graduate school program, and we will have them introduce themselves shortly. I'd like to first give you an overview of what we'll talk about today. We're going to talk about why you want to get a graduate degree. What are the major factors that are contributing to you pursuing a graduate degree? And how do you select your discipline, your program, your school? What are the things you should be considering? Should you be thinking about the faculty at the school, the geographical location, the weather, the cost? And how do you prepare for the application? How do you go about thinking about letters of recommendation, how to write that statement of purpose, and the interview process? Also, another common question that students have is, what's the timeline for applying to graduate school? And how do I prepare a contingency plan? How am I going to fund the graduate program? Can I even afford it at this time? And then we will answer some questions about the personal statement. So at this time, I'd like to invite each of our panelists to introduce themselves and share maybe a piece of advice that you would like to give to your younger self when you were an undergraduate student. And we'll start off with Abby Kuntzleman.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm an incoming PhD student in computational biology at Brown. And if I could talk to my younger self, I would say to chill out because I place a lot of my worth in like my career and my how I'm doing academically. And I ended up having to apply to grad school twice. So I wish I could have taken a deep breath. Just put your best foot forward and don't lose sleep over it. It's not something that makes or breaks who you are as a person. So chill out would be what I would tell my younger self.
Okay, and next, Anna Kimata.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna. I'm a third-year MD PhD student at Brown. And if I were to give advice to my younger self, I guess a little similar to what Abby said, to know that everything will work out, and sometimes you take a different path than you originally thought you were going to take, but that's okay as long as you're staying true to what you want to do with your life and your own values.
Thank you. And the newly distinguished Dr. Logan Northcutt.
Gotcha. Thanks so much for the introduction, Gina. So hi, everybody. My name is Logan Northcutt. I recently just defended my PhD literally last week. So the doctor title is still very new. So yeah, I think I'm here at Vanderbilt University, and if there was one thing that I could be able to tell myself, my younger self, is to kind of, some of the honest point, really have a lot of flexibility. The PhD process can bring a lot of different things along the way. Whether it be things personal, whether it be things in your academic setting, like research and things may not go the way you want to. Projects and directions may not go the same way you want to. So always allow yourself to have the flexibility. And then also, I would also say, don't be afraid to bet on yourself. Make sure that, I think in these types of spaces, it requires a lot of confidence to continue, don't be overbearing with the confidence, but believe that you're here for a reason that you can excel. So don't be afraid to excel in your spaces.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Those were wonderful pieces of advice for students, well needed, I think, at this point. So let's dig into the questions that students have for our panelists, and in no particular order. How did you determine that you wanted to earn a PhD? And talk about when you began to consider it, like realistically, like you could do this. And what were your concerns, and were there mentors or role models who inspired you? So anybody can start.
I'm happy to start. Oh, or Logan.
You go ahead, Anna. Yeah.
Okay. So I suppose my journey is a little bit different than Abby and Logan. I came into undergrad and I knew that I wanted to get my medical degree. I was very set on becoming a clinician. Both of my parents are research scientists, and I had grown up with that intellectual environment. And I thought, like, no, I think research science is really cool, but a PhD is not really what I want to do. And so I actually entered undergrad as part of a combined BSMD program. And over the course of undergrad, I did a lot of research. And I realized that I really loved the intellectual exploration and freedom and the amount of curiosity that you could have and the opportunity to ask questions, and specifically to ask questions about these diseases that I was seeing in the context of, clinical practice, and really dig deeper into understanding the mechanisms of these diseases and how that understanding could translate into real benefit for patients. And so by the end of my undergrad, I realized that the type of work that I would want to do as a clinician was so integrally tied to developing this understanding on a more basic science level. And I had a fantastic mentor who's my current PhD advisor, who is also an MD PhD, who really encouraged me that and told me that, like, you're totally capable of going through this long training process. Like, it is a lot of extra time, but if you're really interested and invested in the research and the clinical side together, then it's totally worth it. And I'm also happy to talk about that more as the webinar goes on.
Thank you, Anna. And you, just to clarify, you mentioned that your mentor explained to you that it was a pretty long process. What, for an MD PhD, what is the expected timeline from start to completion generally?
Yeah, so I think on average, people take about 8 years, but sometimes the PhD portion goes longer. So I know people who have taken like 6 years for their PhD, so then the MD PhD training takes about 10 years. But I would say that the fastest that anyone will do it is like 7 years, and the longest could be up to like 10, 11, depending on the PhD.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I wanted to make that clear for the audience. And Abby.
Yeah, so when I entered undergrad, I knew I broadly wanted to do something related to computer science and biology, like computational biology. But I got really interested in human evolution and ended up minoring in evolutionary anthropology. So I did an undergraduate thesis on like Neanderthal ancestry over time in ancient humans. So it was the perfect combination of evolutionary anthropology and computer science, computational genomics. But when I was ending undergrad, I felt really tired. I realized I'd been in school ever since I'd had memories, and I wanted to do something kind of different. So I ended up teaching elementary school. It was a STEM program for K through 5. And it was so fun to like teach and mentor, bringing like really complicated topics down to, a 5-year-old, something that they can understand, and watching them like grow and develop. I thought that was really cool, but I did really miss like the intellectual exploration that comes with research. So yeah, I applied to a PhD program with the goal of having that combination. There's lots of teaching and mentoring opportunities as a graduate student and further on in academia. And then you also get to do research. So it's just a good combination of things that I'm really passionate about.
And so while you were teaching elementary education is when you started to really think about applying for your PhD?
It was always in the back of my mind as an undergrad, but I was kind of a little up in the air, like trying to figure out what it is that I wanted. But yeah, it definitely solidified that this is what I wanted to do.
And do you feel like that extra time, taking that extra time in between undergrad and grad, allowed you to focus in on exactly what you wanted to do, or?
Yeah, I feel like I did do like a part-time research thing as I was teaching elementary school, which was kind of in a different field. And it definitely made me certain of what it was that I wanted to do. And then I think what really helped me narrow down my research interests more specifically was applying to my postbac. So when I applied the first round for fall of 2023, and actually my husband and I were applying together, trying to get into programs in the same city, and that did not work out. So I ended up applying to a postbac, and it was really in the postbac where I super narrowed down what kind of research I wanted to do for grad school. And I think that helped a lot in the second time. And now here I am, so.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Because that's a common question that we hear from the undergrads is like, I'm interested in all these things, or I'm studying this, but this seems interesting. How do I figure it out? So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Logan, how did you determine that you wanted to do a PhD?
Yeah, so so just a little bit of background about me. So I originally went to Morehouse College for undergrad, and so that's kind of where I first kind of heard about research. When I got into undergrad, I had this idea of doing an MD PhD. To be quite honest with you, and I was just talking to one of the summer students here. I want to do it because it sounded cool, because Doctor sounds pretty fun. But then I kind of quickly realized, just sort of over time, like, doing research experiences. So I was able to do the Leadership Alliance FIRE program. And I realized for me, like, I really enjoyed the research angle of things, not necessarily the medical training side, even though the medical training side is absolutely great and it's a great career path. I knew that for me, I really wanted to kind of be more of understanding the nitty gritty of like what was happening to like whether it be like cellular processes, whether making biomedical materials is something that I kind of fell in love with in undergrad. I really wanted to kind of really get a better understanding of what was kind of happening there. So that's where the reason why I decided to pursue a PhD route rather than another type of route, because I just found out that I wanted the training to be able to conduct research and answer questions that I found really interesting to me. So that's kind of where I sort of so I really decided I really wanted to pursue like PhD probably around my sophomore year. And then from there, I had started doing more research programs, got involved in other programs along with Leadership Alliance, such as the NIH MARC program and also the McNair Scholars program as well too. And they kind of really helped me guide me into making sure that I get into the right PhD program for me. And so that's how I kind of went about deciding how I wanted to do a PhD and how I was able to successfully get into one. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And so as I mentioned during the introduction, there are so many things to consider when thinking about applying and actually beginning that process. So, the faculty at the schools, the geographical location, the weather, the cost, all of those things. Well, Abby, you kind of shared with us that you and your husband were trying to, be married in the same city. So that obviously took a priority. But Abby, for you, what were like, in addition to that, like what were some of the considerations? Like how did you really, and your husband, like consider this?
Yeah, something I've noticed being in Providence and like being, going into a graduate program, you definitely live in the city more so. Like in undergrad, I felt like I was on a campus. My experience of my undergrad city was really just my undergraduate campus. I didn't really get into the city at all. But as a graduate student, you are like in the city. So you definitely want to go somewhere that you like. And I really love Providence. I love New England in general, all the cities. There's like lots of just fun stuff to do, outside of school. Yeah, lots of nature too. I really like going out and hiking and stuff. So that was a big factor. And then as far as like the specific program, I just like looked up all the faculty of the programs I was interested in. And I would just like control F, like human genetics, population genetics, like who does research that's at least a little bit related to what I'm interested in. And then I compiled like a list of my faculty that I was interested in. It fit, research fit was good and the city was good. Then that's how I picked. That's how I narrowed down which schools I applied to.
So research first, the faculty, and then the schools. And let me ask you a question. Did you reach out to the individual faculty members, or, did you read their publications? Like how did you kind of determine, in addition to doing that type of website research that was going to be a good fit for you?
Yeah, I would skim their like pages. They always have like a little bio of what they're interested in. And I did reach out to a lot of the faculty. Sometimes the bios are outdated or there's stuff you don't get as far as like what they're doing currently. So reaching out to them is a good way for you to figure out like what are the upcoming projects in their lab? Is this something I would really be interested in? Or like, oh, that project sounds really different from what I saw on your website. Maybe you like that, maybe you don't. I think that it gives you a good feel for what you might actually be doing in that person's lab.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to switch up the order a little bit. I'm going to go to Logan. So Logan, what did you consider when you were applying for your PhD programs? What seemed to be most important to you, and how'd you narrow it down?
Yeah, so I think for me, sort of similar to Abby, I think fit was really the biggest part of that. I know probably word that you'll hear a lot as you're applying, as everybody here on the call might be applying to graduate school. I really tried to find the best place that I felt like would work best for me in terms of like one, like financial compensation for the school. Also, location was a really big thing for me as well too. Because similar to Abby said, like you really, as a graduate student, you know, you are really living into the city, right? I feel like as graduate students, we really don't hang around undergrads and things like that a lot. So it's a whole different dynamic from that. And I think also I just tried to find the best location, which I think worked great for me. Because I knew for me, I wanted to be in more of a metropolitan city. I didn't want to kind of be on the outskirts because I had a partner that was living in another major city and just trying to get to airports would be just a hassle to get to some places. So I just knew that that was something that was really important for me. I'm trying to think what other things were important. And then also one of the things is just making sure they had a really good support system there for students of color as well too, because not every school has a great support system for students of color. So I tried to really make sure that we had things like the places that I went to had programs such as the NIH IMSD program. They had other what's what I'm looking for, like minority affinity groups and things of that sort there. So like here we have an organization called the Organization of Black Graduate and Professional Students. And then also to make sure that they had people and mentors that who really want students to succeed. Because one thing one of my mentors said while I'm Morehouse that in graduate school, it's harder to get out than it is necessarily in medical school, and that could be kind of taken however you want to. But in the PhD program, it is very research driven, and things may not always work out the exact way that you want them to. So you have to be able to have people in the mix able to be amenable and able to sort of get you out of the program in a swiftly fashion and not have you kind of linger around for such a long period of time. And I knew that Vanderbilt had those people there, had those people there and still have those people here who are really willing to make sure that the students' best interests are look after. So those were some of the things I looked for when I was deciding graduate program.
Logan, that is so important, making sure that those structural support pieces are in place. Yes, absolutely. And I want to ask you something else. So, Logan, as you mentioned, you were a fire student and you were the first cohort of first-year research experience students with the Leadership Alliance. This year, we have almost 60 fire students.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. Wow. And
That's
they're
not
probably
crazy, yeah.
watching, and they're probably watching right now.
Hey, fire students, how y'all doing?
And so I believe, did you do one of your summer research experiences with the Leadership Alliance at Vanderbilt?
Yeah, so that was actually my first program. So when I was a fire student, that's exactly, I went to Vanderbilt here for my summer program. So it was actually funny at my defense seeing sort of all those same people that were there here. So it's almost a complete full circle moment.
Oh, nice, nice. So at least like with Vanderbilt, like you kind of tried it on for size a little bit, like kind of knew what you were getting into, which is nice.
Yeah. And I guess that would be a piece of advice that I would say for folks, especially in later stages. So people in their junior years, as junior going into their senior years, who are interested in going to graduate school, I would really say try to set your sights on places that you would think that you would want to go to for graduate school, because it's a good, like you said, try it on for size sort of situation. Because it's, I mean, of course, people who go to graduate school have not been there, haven't had the whole month experience, but it is really good to one, build your network and get those connections. So when it's time to apply letters of recommendation and things, it's not having to go from outside. You have people in the inside that know who they are. It's like, okay, I can vouch for this person. And I think that it'd be a good fit for our institution. So I think that's something that I think I would like, hopefully everybody in Leadership Alliance who's interested in pursuing a PhD or going to grad school in general can get an opportunity to do.
Right. Thank you.
Mm.
And Anna, so applying to MD, PhD programs, I mean, there are not a lot of, you didn't have a choice of from 4,000 different institutions who offer MD, PhD. So how did you go about figuring it all out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the considerations are the same as for a PhD only, especially with respect to fit. You want to think about, like Logan and Abby have both mentioned, the city that you're going to live in, the cost of the city that you're going to live in, and what kind of compensation you're going to be receiving from the graduate school or from the MD PhD program. And then the fit of the PIs themselves. So like Abby was saying, looking through the website to see what different people are doing. And I think also, if there's a couple people that you've really identified whose work you're interested in, reaching out to those people, maybe having a phone call or a Zoom call to see what your rapport is like with them. And then maybe also, if you can, talking with their graduate students or postdocs to see what kind of support they have in their lab, what kind of mentoring style they feel like the PI has, because I think that's another really critical component of your graduate school experience. Everyone has a different learning style. Every mentor has a different style of how much they like to be around the lab, how much they like to check in with you, how hands-on or hands-off they are, and different things work better for different people. And I think knowing that going in and knowing what's available, like Logan was saying, what resources are available to you, what support is available to you from that like mentorship side is really important. And I got advice when I was applying from a MD PhD student who was in the lab that I was working in. And he told me, you should, if you have, a group of labs that you're trying to decide between, or places you're trying to decide between, and the difference is, maybe one, you have more intellectual interest in the topic, but another, that you would have fantastic support and the PI is really invested in your growth as a student and making sure that you get like X, Y, and Z opportunities. Pick the place where the person is invested in you, because the goal of a PhD is, on the one hand, to develop expertise in this very specific area, but on the other, you're really fundamentally trying to develop your skills at thinking, how to form a research question, how to develop this project, how to, learn the background of this particular field, how to think about things in a very specific way, and dig deeper into these questions. And you can get those skills at most every institution that you would train at, but finding the right mentor, the right fit for you at a particular school in a given environment, I think is the more challenging part. Some other things to consider for the MD PhD specifically, there's different types of MD PhD programs. So there are MSTP programs, which are funded by the NIH. And in those programs, you'll have your tuition for medical school and for graduate school covered. You'll get the grad school stipend. You'll often also get a living stipend. There are also schools with MD PhD programs that are not MSTP funded. And for those schools, it varies, how much support you'd get for medical school, whether you'd get a stipend, and those kind of things. So I think it's important to do your research about that, to ask current students about the stipend, the support that they get from the program itself, because it's not all the same across all MD PhD programs. And I also think it's something I considered was what the stipend was and what the cost of living was in that city, because oftentimes you may be spending, a lot of money on your living expenses, and if the cost of living and the stipend don't equal out, then you have to think about like how are you going to kind of compensate for the rest of that budget. And then I guess beyond just like those kind of specific logistical things, on the medical school side, something that I thought about was like, what is the clinical environment that you're going to be stepping into if you know that you're interested in a very specific specialty? Is the institution strong in that specialty? Do they have a residency program there? Because when you ultimately apply for residency, you're going to want support from your home institution. And if your institution doesn't have a home program, for example, for some of the like surgical subspecialties, then that makes it a little bit more challenging to match into your specialty of choice. And so thinking about, what kind of support will you get from the medical school, and how integrated is the MD PhD program with the medical school and with the graduate school, and do they, talk with each other? What kind of support are you going to get from all three? I think those are important things that you want to think about, because it will make a big difference in the training that you get, and how easy it will be to kind of facilitate those transition points along your training, when you're moving from the med school to the graduate school, or from the graduate school back to medical school. And then the other thing that you want to think about is, what is the structure of the MD PhD program? Because some schools, that pretty much all of the schools that are MSTP funded, are 2-4-2. So you do 2 years of medical school, you take your board exams, and then you do the 4 years of PhD or longer, however long the PhD takes, and then you come back and do your last 2 years of medical school. But there's other programs that will let you do like 3-4-1 or 1-4-3. So thinking about what are the timelines for each program, and how does that fit into your personal timeline? Also things to consider.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all of that information. That was wonderful. And you mentioned about stipends, and that was something that I also wanted to make sure that students are aware that stipends vary, not just from school to school, location to location, but even program to program, sometimes program to program within a same department in the same school. So it's real important, as you mentioned, to do that research. And Anna, I think also that piece of advice you gave, talk to the other grad students in the program. And going back to what Logan said about supports, finding out from those grad students what kind of support that you've all alluded to is so important for your success. Thank you. And so along that line, one of the questions submitted by students has to do with what was something that you were worried about, or you thought was going to be a struggle, or what is something that you have struggled with during your graduate program, and how did you overcome that struggle, that barrier, or whatever it is? What if you would like to share a story, or if there was something that you were concerned about or have struggled with.
So I guess I'll chime in. I guess one of the biggest struggles that I actually had to do during my time in my PhD was actually I had to find a new mentor in the middle of mine. Yeah, so those situations happen. Yeah, so I mean, I think during that time, I just realized that, and me and my advisor both realized that, what the project and things that I was doing was really kind of out of the scope of what was out of the scope of support that my advisor at the time was able to give me. So I actually ended up working with another PI that was actually on my committee, and then we ended up doing a co-mentorship. And so I think that's one of the things that I said, if I was talking to my younger self, don't be afraid of being flexible. Because I think one of the things in graduate school that you're gonna have to realize is that sometimes to get out of situations, you have to be creative a little bit. So I think that was one scenario that I struggled with for a little bit of time, because I had there was a lot of self-doubt that sort of creeped in, and was like, am I able to do this? Will I still finish on time? Will this take so much ever? And at the end of the day, it didn't. Like, I was able to graduate on time as soon as I wanted to. From that, it ended up leveling out to be like the best situation for me. So I think that was one thing to also consider, and kind of what I thought about as well too, because during that period of time, there was a lot of things that I had to sort of reorganize, and I had a lot of mentors and a lot of support systems that really helped me sort of navigate that transition as smoothly as possible. So I think that's one of the big things that I had to deal with in my graduate program. And I think it's something important to say that sometimes in graduate programs, it's not even like even the classes stuff, even though they can be difficult, can be hard, you're also navigating a lot of the politics and things of that sort that happen in graduate school. You're mediating expectations and things of that sort, and just long term, what are those impacts going to look like down the road? So those will be one of the issues, and that's how I kind of went about solving one of those issues in graduate school. But there's a litany of different ones. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's certainly unexpected. And well, actually, I'll share that that same thing happened to me during my doctoral program. 2 years in, my mentor decided she was going to retire, and oh, could I finish up in 4 months? I was like, no. It was unnerving, I have to say. So good job. Thank you for sharing. And it's something I hadn't thought about in a long time today. Abby or Anna, would you like to share?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I think one of the things that I struggled with, and just from speaking with my colleagues, both in the medical school, friends who are residents or fellows, and mentors who are attendings, and also fellow graduate students, is imposter syndrome. And I think that it's very prevalent, but people don't talk about it a lot. But this feeling that, questioning whether you belong in this space. And I think that for me, especially when I started out, I was entering a field where I'm definitely a minority. And sometimes, you're surrounded by experts in the field who have spent their lives dedicated to understanding X, Y, and Z biological process, or caring for patients, or doing both. And it can be very intimidating. And I think it's important to remember that you are here for a reason, that you were accepted into this program for a reason, that you have a history of demonstrated work in this field, and that part of the reason why you're in this program is to build your expertise and learn and train with these people who are going to prepare you to contribute to the field more. And I think that developing that confidence over time takes time. And just from speaking with my mentors, it's something that, they have struggled with and continue to struggle with. And so I think that it's kind of nice for people to hear that this is, it's a feeling that seems to be relatively ubiquitous throughout, all of the people that I've spoken with. So you're not alone if you feel like that. But also remember that, like, you can do it. When you're chosen for a reason, and you definitely have what it takes to, go through and complete your program.
Thank you. And yep.
I think so. I haven't actually started my PhD program yet, so I can't speak to that. But as far as the application process, definitely getting motivated to apply the second time was really hard, because seeing like so many rejections when I put so much of my time and energy into preparing these applications, even schools, that you interview with, you think you have a good connection, and then they reject you. That was really tough. And I feel like I just really relied on like my mentors and my family at that point to help keep reminding me, like, no, you are, like, you've been talking about this for a while. This is something you're really good at. Yeah, so definitely finding motivation to apply the second time was hard. And then, yeah, it worked out in the end.
It did. Thank you so much. And so everybody, I'm sure you've noticed that we have a new face who popped up. Rubén Flores. I would like for him to introduce himself. He is earning his PhD in Humanities. And as you probably already noticed, Anna, Logan, and Abby are STEM. So Rubén, please tell us a little bit about yourself. And take it away.
Really great to meet everyone. First of all, let me apologize for my tardiness. I had an emergency that popped up at home very last minute. And so thank you all for your patience with that.
Thank you for being here in spite of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Thank you again. So yes, my name is Rubén Flores. I am a second-year doctoral student in the Department of Anthropology at NYU. I have a very long history to get to graduate school. My undergraduate major was in music, right? And that meant that transitioning into social sciences and humanities-based research methods was an uphill battle for me, but one that I was really glad to do. I know that you all have a lot of access because of the Leadership Alliance, and are meeting different professors and are making friends across various disciplines. And that's regardless of whether you're in, the sciences or the humanities or otherwise. Remember these relationships. These relationships will be incredibly valuable to you as you move into your graduate school application process. I can't tell you how many people I had read over my statements of purpose, not once, not twice, but multiple times. Creating that community with one another to be able to get feedback off of what your statements look like, whether a program seems like it's a good fit for you or not, can be really, really important. I know as a first-generation college student, it was a lot of counsel that I needed from other people. I knew what the right decisions were for me, but I needed to verbalize that with others. And so I really encourage all of you to think about that. I also want to encourage you all, for those of you that are in social sciences or humanities, we have a plethora of different methodologies that we use in comparison with our SEMS colleagues, right? Whether we want to do methods that are analyzing particular pieces of literature or analyzing particular forms of cultural production, or whether we want to do quantitative methods in, say, political science or qualitative methods like ethnographic work, there's a lot of ways to study what we study. And so knowing what methods really hit for you, make you want to get up in the morning, is so, so important. I hope that was just a little bit of sort of what I've done and the ideas that I've tried to think about as I'm coming to the graduate school process and what I had to think about during the process.
Thank you so much, Rubén. So we've had several students ask similar questions, and that is, what are the benefits to taking a break in between undergrad and graduate studies, whether it's going into industry? What are the benefits of getting a master's degree if you know you want to get a PhD? They would like to know the panelists' thoughts on taking that break, because there's obviously pros and cons. Whoever would like to start.
I'll go. Yeah. So I think it's momentum versus experiences, right? When you go right in, if you are going right from undergrad into graduate school, you have the momentum of knowing what it's like to produce a paper, right, under tight deadlines. The momentum of being thick and deep into the literatures that you want to get into, or at least you have that idea right then and there. And so there's a lot of momentum that you have going in. But I think equally as important is to think about the opportunities, because graduate school is great and I'm learning a lot, but there are certain experiences that I could not have while in the classroom simply because that's not how classroom or coursework is. I took 3 years. I worked in nonprofit for a little bit. I traveled around the world, and I made sure to get my home life in order before going back to graduate school. And that was really important for me. But I have friends that equally use that momentum to go right in, and that was the right choice for them. It's really about knowing where in life you're at any given moment.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Rubén was saying, I really feel like taking some time in between undergrad and grad school helps you solidify what it is that you want to do. Because it's true, there is momentum, like it's easier to keep going. But it's also true that you might just kind of be doing it because it's the next step and you're not really sure what else there is to do. I guess graduate school is something I should do because I have this degree and now I don't know what to do. So I think taking some time and like really making sure that it's something you want to commit to, for me, it was really helpful, and I feel a lot more motivated now, having taken that time. But then there is also, you know, delayed settling into your career. That is a negative that happens.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll definitely add on to Abby's point, where I think that it's important to kind of know why you want to definitely go into graduate school. And I know we just previously had a session on that, because it is a really long process, and it is a little bit sort of, you know, I'll be totally honest. It's definitely interesting to sort of see a lot of my friends who are already in their residency now, and I just finished up my doctorate, or seeing individuals who've been in the workforce for such a long period of time now and able to do a lot more financially than I could. This is based off of how everything is. So, I mean, but I think it's important to know, like, why is it that you want to continue this, why you want to pursue it, and why you want to continue it. In regards to actually taking breaks, I think it just really depends on what the intention for the break is. And I think it's important for you to know what that is before you actually decide to take it. Is it more so that you've had 4 years of schooling and you just need a break before you jump into a program? Or is it that you want to gain some more skill sets before you actually go into your PhD program? Do you just want to know what the workforce and what the industry, or whether it be nonprofits or things like that, look like before you want to continue on? Because I think one of the biggest, I have seen over time that, you know, people will just jump into a PhD program and then not have any idea what they're doing with it. And then that's when a lot of the burnout and things happen, because it can be very rigorous program, and it's very rigorous. It could be even more rigorous when you don't know why you're doing something. So always kind of operate in intention with that. In terms of taking gap years, I've had several of my friends who've done post-bac programs. And I think, to be quite honest with you, if I were to redo this process over again, I would have maybe decided to take a post-bac program, because it is very different doing undergraduate research for maybe 3 or 4 hours every other day, rather than having it be a full-blown 9 to 5 job. So there's definitely varying differences within that. So I would just say, I think with all that I just said, I would just say, just be very mindful of what the intention for that gap year is. And then just really kind of operate from that, if you wanted to.
Thank you, Logan. Anna.
Yeah, I think what everyone has already said, I would definitely echo. It's definitely about intention. I guess for context, I did not take a gap year, but I also have lots of friends. In fact, most of my friends who are in the MD PhD program took a gap year before starting, one or several gap years. And so I think it really comes down to you reflecting on what you feel like you need. Whether that's, you know, you think you need more research experience to either build your CV or to develop an idea of what you're really interested in, or maybe you feel like you just want to go straight through because you know what you want to do and you don't want to delay your timeline anymore. I think it really just comes down to what is going to work for you, and kind of figuring that out and thinking that through.
Thank you.
Sorry, Gina, do you mind if I say one more thing? I would just also say too, in terms of the folks who are interested in gap years, what I would say is, don't use the gap year to operate out of fear. Don't take a gap year just because you want to operate out of fear. Because I think there are a lot of people who will take the gap years because I'm scared that I may not get in, or I'm scared that I may not be able to do it. I think if you have the credentials already, like if you already, like for example, we want to do an MD PhD, if you already have the great MCAT score, you already have the great things, already have all the great application, I'll say give it a try at least. Because I know there are people who just kind of like, well, I don't know if I want to do it. I'm scared to like put in an application because I don't want to get rejected, so I'm not going to do it. You don't know. I always operate on assumption. Don't let people don't tell yourself no, let other people tell you no. So you just want to be mindful of that.
That's awesome.
If you're already in Leadership Alliance, then you already have proven to the folks here that you have the goods. And I will tell you this, that there isn't, at least for the humanities and social science folks, the difference between your applications here and your applications to graduate school are just ones of focus. Like that's really, really it. So you probably already have the goods for it. Let other people tell you no. Exactly.
Love it. Did any of you earn a master's degree before going into or during your PhD? I want to touch upon this a little bit for the students because there were a couple of questions. So there have been a couple of questions. Should I get a master's degree before going into a PhD? And I think Anna and Logan touched upon, do you feel like you need more content, more exposure? But let me also draw this distinction that master's degrees, for the most part, are a full out-of-pocket expense. Like you can get loans for your master's, but a PhD program generally is funded under one way or another, fellowships, teaching stipends, things like that. But here's the thing, if you're not quite sure what you want to go for your PhD in, perhaps a master's degree in content will strengthen if that is the area that you intend to go into. And I will also tell you that most PhD programs will give you credit for your master's degree coursework in one, especially if it's in the same field. But like, let's say if your master's degree, you had quantitative courses, qualitative methodology courses, those are going to be the same as at a master's level or a PhD level. As a matter of fact, students in their master's programs taking those classes are generally in those classes with PhD students. So it's not that you're never wasting your time. So I want to make that clear. And often those courses transition can be included in your PhD program. So there are a lot of good reasons to get a master's degree. The biggest thing to consider is that expense for it.
I would also say, in my experience, that oftentimes departments have particular requirements that even if they're done at another university, they want them done in their department for the standardization of their scholars. And so one thing that I would say to folks that are thinking about getting a master's degree, or when they're on the other side of that, you decide that is the right choice for you. On the other side of it, when you're going for your PhDs, make sure to ask upfront about whether those credits will transfer or not. And make sure to get a solid answer on that. You do not want to be thinking, right, that you've shaved a whole year off of what is a 6 to 7 year endeavor because of the master's work that you've done, only to have you find out that that's not in fact the case. That happened to a friend of mine in another department.
Yeah, great point. It's true. Okay, so getting close to our 1 hour mark. So I want to make sure that we talk about most asked questions. And one of those is, how can I stand out? What can make me stand out to an admissions committee? Is it extracurriculars? Here's a good one research project that extended over the course of different semesters or a year, or multiple research projects with different mentors and different things, like what, or a strong statement of purpose, letters of rec. What's your advice? Well, how can a student stand out? What are your experiences?
So I spent a lot of time thinking about what exactly the difference between my two applications were in the 2 rounds that I applied. And I think the biggest difference is that in the second one, I had like a really specific area of research that I wanted to do. I had specific research questions. I had applied to a fellowship from the NSF where you have to write a research statement. And before I wrote that, I had no idea how to formulate a research question. So I just sat down and I thought about it. And then I realized after writing that, I didn't just have those questions that I had written down. I also had other ones that kind of came up during the process. And so I was able to write about those in my statements and in my interviews. And I think that helped a lot. I think if you don't have a super like specific focus, it's not that you can still get into a great program, but I think that helped my application. But that's just my theory.
I think that for MD PhD programs specifically, the really big question that you will get on your application and that you will get from probably everybody who interviews you is, why do you want both degrees? and give me a strong argument for what you're hoping to do in your career or what you're hoping to get from this dual degree training that you would not be able to get from only doing an MD or only doing a PhD. And I think that part of the reason why that's like having a compelling argument for that is so important is because you can do research with an MD. You can't practice clinical medicine with a PhD, but you can ask strong research questions, and you can do a lot of similar types of projects with either degree. And so, you know, being able to answer why you specifically need both degrees is something that will come up a lot. And then the other thing that I would say, besides what Abby said about having, you know, really specific research focus in an area that you're interested in, is that it's really obvious from talking with students whether you're really passionate about a topic, whether you're really interested in this thing that you've described in your application that you say that you're interested in. And so I think the biggest piece of advice that I could give is when you're picking activities and picking research projects and things that you're doing in undergrad or in a postdoc, really picking things that you are really interested in, not just adding things to your application because you think that this is what you need to put to get into X, Y, and Z school, or saying things in your interview because it's what you think the interviewers want to hear, but rather really honing in on the things that you're really passionate about, because that will come through when you speak with people.
That's great.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would add in terms of, I guess, standing out in your application, I think one is sort of similar to what Anna said, is be very authentic. You don't want to try to come in and try to, you know, put on a front or facade from that, because that doesn't do anything. The committee wouldn't be able to know you, and then you wouldn't know if this would be a good fit for you. So really just be authentic, but then also be able, one of the things that I see whenever I look at people's personal statements, in which honestly, the two biggest pieces of the application I think is really important are the personal statement and then also letters of recommendation. So one thing my mentors always told me when it comes to letter recommendations, when you ask your recommenders, make sure you ask them, can I get strong, positive letters of recommendation? Because because you don't want to have somebody write something that's going to be haphazard. It looks worse. I rather would not even put in a bad letter, like a haphazard letter of recommendation. So from that, what I would also say in regards to the personal statement, making sure that you also are able to tell your story. So for me, I jumped around a lot during my summer experiences and my research and stuff like that. But one of the things I was able to do is really create a clear story as to, like, even though I did all these different things, this is how this led me into becoming, this is why I want to pursue a PhD in this area, because from these particular experiences, I found this topic really interesting, or I found this area of research really interesting, and I want to pursue that further at a higher level. So just making sure that those, all those things are there, but then also make sure all your application materials are aligned with each other. You don't want a disjointed application, because reviewers will look at that and they'll be like, I don't know if this person knows what they want, because their mentor is saying something totally different than what they're saying in their personal statement. So just making sure all of those pieces are kind of aligned together. So whether that be sharing your statement with the people that are doing your letters of recommendation, or just even giving them highlights and things of that sort, just making sure that all of those different pieces are aligned together.
Thank you.
I want to be mindful of the time, but I really want the social science and humanities folks to hear this, because I think that this is very important. If you want to stand out in the field of applicants, there are a couple of things that you need to highlight in your statement of purpose. You need to highlight very coherently and scholastically what the project that you want to endeavor in graduate school. By and large, most of us take on individual projects as opposed to lab-based projects. And so you need to show that you have a cogent understanding of the type of project that you are going to pursue, replete with all the questions that you want to ask, and on some of the various literatures that you want to draw upon to answer those questions within the field. Your biggest hurdle is always going to be fit. Do you fit within the department? And notice I say department and I don't say an individual mentee or mentor, excuse me, or an advisor. You should never apply to a place hoping to work with just one person for many, many, many reasons that I won't get into now. That said, it is a proven strategy to work between 3 people. I want to work with this professor, and this professor, Professor A for this reason, Professor B for this reason, and Professor C for this reason. You want to show that you fit within the department by triangulating yourself amongst folks that are there. You want to emphasize the unique opportunities that a department or school can provide to you, which another school cannot. This shows them that you've been looking very cogently and very diligently at what particular schools can offer you. And I think by doing those things, by outlining your project, telling exactly who you want to work with and why at this institution, you will have you will stand out more than probably 60 to 70% of the people that apply to graduate school because of just how much work you put into it. For those LAMI students that are here, I highly suggest you to go to the Institute for Recruitment of Teachers presentation or talk that I know is on your schedule. I was very fortunate to work with the program who helped me make statements of purpose for over 12 different schools and helped me pay for all of the fees associated with it. I was very lucky. I stayed grateful and humble, but I applied to about 12 schools and I got into half of them, right? And so these are the sorts of things that you want to employ when you're applying to graduate school in the arts and this humanities and social sciences, excuse me.
Thank you, Rubén. Abby, I want to give you the last word. If there's anything you'd like to add to stand out.
Yeah, about standing out. Yeah, so definitely I think having a focused research direction is a good idea. And to add to that, if you have specific research questions, but you're not really sure if that's what you want to study, like that's okay. You don't have to be, you don't have to study exactly what it is that you said you wanted to study in your application, just something related. Another thing that helps too, and I wish it wasn't this way, but connections also really help. If your faculty member is collaborating, like whoever your PI is that you did research with in undergrad, if they collaborate with somebody at university or they graduated from somebody else's lab, having that connection is huge. The letter of recommendation from your PI is going to mean a lot more to that person than a letter of recommendation from someone they don't know. So asking your mentor who they collaborate with, or you know whose lab they were in when they were doing their PhD, it can be really helpful to help you figure out, you know, where people might be a little more eager to look at your application.
Wow, thank you. That was helpful. That's absolutely true. Thank you all so much. I'm so sorry that we are out of time. This went by so fast. On behalf of the Leadership Alliance, we are so grateful to this group of panelists. You provided such invaluable insights, information, sharing your experiences. We cannot thank you enough for that. And in that vein, would it be okay if students who are a part of our Google Classroom who registered for the VPD, would it be okay if they reached out to you if through email, if they have a specific follow-up information, you said something that piqued their interest and they really want to reach out to you?
I would really appreciate getting in touch with students who might be interested. I know that I popped on a little late, and so there's a lot more that I could say and would want to say. And so if you're interested in talking and strategizing, I would love to talk with them.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Good luck to all of you with your upcoming year, new endeavors. Though I think Rubén and Logan, we're going to see you at the Leadership Alliance National Symposium this summer. In a month, well, this month, we'll see you.
Yeah, this month was crazy.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all again. And everybody, as you heard, please reach out to the individuals on the panels if you had additional questions or you really wanted to follow up with them. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week. Safe 4th of July, and looking forward to seeing you next week.